Hi everyone, Brian here wishing you a great Monday and a wonderful week ahead. We're continuing to look at Jesus as an essentially important image of somebody who lived soulfully. Our whole series has been about seeing the Bible as a place to find a reference for us in the 21st century, or any century that the Bible gets picked up and read, a source of comprehending our very nature, including the soulfulness that's within us. It's actually my concern that most people always think that religion, or especially in the West, that religious life comes from outside, that somehow God transcends and gets into our head almost magically. And that's the only source by which we can look for religious inspiration, or of course through the authority of the Bible or the clergy or some other way we come to comprehend that God's Spirit is there, again, concretely on the outside. But I think a closer reading of Scripture, and certainly a closer understanding of Jesus, is that Scripture and Jesus are always pointing us inside, into our interiority, and reminding us over and over and over again that the divine rhythm, the divine wisdom, the divine understanding, and our connection to that divine rhythm is found within. And that we all have, every human being, has a soul as part of the natural heritage of what it means to be us. This means, of course, that when we say of Jesus that he was fully human and fully divine, we mean that in that fully human part, he was blessed with a soul. And so therefore, rather than trying to figure out how he's somehow can be both human and divine at the same time, what we can comprehend is that the gateway that is within us, between ourselves, that's within us to the world of the divine, our soul, that we normally keep locked and closed, or that at least we ignore all the time. We can simply see a divine truth in Jesus, that even in his humanity, he was consistently open to this divine rhythm. That his everyday consciousness, while perfectly capable of being distracted just like we are, was never allowed himself to get trapped in that, caught up in a situation or a moment. He never allowed himself to become aligned with that or glued to that event. He was always free to comprehend the voice of the soul within him. It's been my observation that most modern Christians really want to emphasize the humanity of Jesus, or over again, the divinity of Jesus. But holding those two together is really, really tough. And I think that's because we don't comprehend the capacity of the human soul. And if we were all to, I don't like that phrase, but if we were to come to know our soulfulness within, then we would be able to see that Jesus is not a supernatural reality, but a natural reality with a capital N and a capital R. That Jesus is as we all could be. And that the breaking open of the kingdom of heaven, which occurred within him, and then within his mission and ministry, and then within his disciples, and then within the church through the centuries, that is not a supernatural event. It is simply the breaking open of our true nature. And that, to me, is the exciting piece. The problem is if we think of Jesus as a superhuman being, or certainly as a God walking among us, that puts a huge gulf between us and Jesus. And I have to confess the church is good at creating that gulf, because then it says, oh, I've got the drawbridge over the moat to let you into that relationship with Jesus. If it is, of course, a completely natural reality and that the work of Jesus is going on all the time, then there is no gulf. And rather than the church being a drawbridge over the gulf, the church simply needs to be a signpost that says, no gulf here, enjoy your life, find the same union with the divine that Jesus himself had and promised to us. So I'd just like to read again the words we know so well from John's, the first chapter of John. But then again to see what if we look at those words through the lenses of the possibility that John comprehended the reality of the soul within us. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life. And the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness will not overcome it. Goes on for a section about John the Baptist. The true light which enlightens everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came into being through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, and his own people did not accept him. But to all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become children of God, who were born not of blood or of the will of the flesh or of the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and lived among us, and we have seen his glory. The glory is of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. I've taken out the sections about John the Baptist, which are very important to this segment and very important to John writing this gospel. Because in this little segment, we're still looking specifically at Jesus. And we'll come back to this passage, including the words from John the Baptist. But these are words that have become so dear to so many Christians, and certainly recognizable. But they've become very tenuous for people. They all want to go, John was going a little over the edge here. But in fact, if we understand that John himself comprehended, or the author of John comprehended, and had been brought into a new comprehension and experience of him or herself, whoever wrote this gospel, an alignment inside that allowed this author to know and experience and feel the connection between the deep truth and the voice of the inner soul and the comprehension of the everyday self that's busy with all of the activities of life. If the author understood this, and then understood that this was part of human nature, then this gospel, the introduction to this gospel begins to make sense. Not that it didn't before, but it makes sense along the lines of what we're trying to convey about the experience of Jesus. That in fact, Jesus is in alignment with the original creative process that began with Big Bang and ends for each of us in the now moment we happen to be in. That whole process from Big Bang to now is a natural process in which the living Word is integrated into the life of the expanding universe, into the creation of our own galaxy, our own solar system, our own particularly living planet, and the fiber of our own being. It is natural. And this opens up all sorts of doors for us to comprehend the wisdom and insight not only of Jesus, but of his earliest followers, who actually felt extraordinarily transformed. So again, we want to suggest that there is an open, well, we know that there's always an open relationship within our souls between the joyous experience of this concrete life and world. The soul is the thing that's always identifying beauty, joy, hope. It also identifies horror, blasphemy, disgust, hurt, and the distinction between good and evil. It comprehends all of those things, all on the plane of existence that we can discuss easily, even with atheists. And this identifying of the kind of meaning, significance, zest of the life we're living all comes from the soul. And even an atheist can talk about those things, even if that person isn't going to use the word soul to describe it. We, however, know that the soul is not limited to its experience of only the concrete world that we have on this particular plane, but unites us to the Alpha and the Omega, the before and after, the whole stream of reality that bursts out beyond the concrete world that we're experiencing. In other words, it catches us up into the great spirit, the living spirit of the divine itself, emanating from God the Creator, made very available to us through the living Word, and accessible to us at all times. So we are welcomed into the experience of this extraordinary spirit that is moving through us at all times. And now we can open the scriptures and see that Jesus' message was to, first of all, open our awareness to this truth, which the Hebrew people have been struggling with in their covenant relationship with God, and that we still struggle with, unfortunately, as well. Jesus simply opened our eyes to the reality of the connection between the divine rhythm and the human individual, but also the alignment within himself between the everyday self that's filled with anxieties and concerns and interests and wonders about the what's going on in the world around us and how do we live it, who are we, who is our family, what is our culture, what are my beliefs, all of those things that are running around here. Jesus was able to align it very potently with the deep awareness of what's going on within each of us. Because Jesus was constantly open to the full spectrum of the spirit at work throughout the universe, and fully awake to the connection of that within himself as an individual. But more importantly, he was able to heal, instruct, nurture all of us to do the same. So Jesus is not a great divine other, but a great Christ to be with us. And that's what we're going to be looking for as we now move. We'll come back to Jesus several times, but we're going to go look at some of the other characters in Scripture and look at what we've heard as their, sort of core teaching or what they wanted to say, and all of a sudden perhaps see that what they're really saying is that they themselves have been grown and changed and nurtured into new people, not different people, but renewed people who are more in line with their interior reality, and that interior reality more attuned to the Great Spirit. So enjoy your week, enjoy your summer, and thanks for listening.